Budget 2023. What are some interesting things that you can let me know?
Actually, I can tell you all the things that's going to happen in the budget.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. And today we have a special guest with us. And this person is definitely way more famous than me. So he doesn't need much introduction. And here he is.
Hi, Peter.
YB, first question for you. From a broad perspective, actually what is the state of Malaysia economy right now?
Actually, the consumer spending, the retail spending, has been up 30%. And the number now is higher than 2013. So the economy is improving. The first quarter numbers showed a strong result, 5% growth in terms of GDP. And second quarter looks also strong. And so we are confident that we will meet the government's GDP forecast of 5.3 to 6.3%. So we're quite upbeat about the growth for Malaysia this year.
Right. Let us go to some hotter issue right now.
Hotter. What kind of
put you on the
issue?
hot seat, YB? Over the past few weeks or last few months, there's a lot of news about government removing subsidies, and people are complaining about it. What are some of the thoughts about this?
Well, first, let me make it clear that actually government is not reducing subsidies. Definitely not reducing, but in fact, we are increasing it by many times, right? Last year, numbers are smaller, right? Last year, actually, we spent about 16 billion ringgit. This year, we budgeted for this. We budgeted about 31 billion. But as we announced recently, it's already going to touch 80 billion ringgit. So that's definitely not a reduction. Going forward, to make it sustainable and to make it more justified or fairer in a way, is that we need to ensure that we support the people that need the subsidy.
Now, let's move on to another question, and this is about recession. I personally, and many rayats are also quite worried. What is Malaysia's state right now? Are we actually resilient enough to handle what's going to come ahead of us?
If we look at what's happening in the developed markets, especially the US, that the threat of recession is real, right? But for Malaysia, for this year at least, where we can easily forecast what's going to happen based on the data that we have and the projection that we have, we should be on track to achieve our target. I mentioned just now, target between 5.3 to 6.3%. It's talking about GDP target, and we show that our fundamentals are very strong. I mentioned just now, first quarter 5%. Towards the end of our second quarter, the data shows that we continue to grow even stronger than the first quarter. So we are optimistic. There's a lot of issues beyond our control. What's happening, energy prices going up, right? That's why inflation is also going up. The geopolitics, the lockdowns in China, and Malaysia being a small and trading nation will definitely be somewhat affected. But we are very optimistic and confident in a way that we will not go into a recession this year, right? So we've seen how our inflation is under control. Even our monetary policy, although OPR has gone up by 25 basis points, it's still accommodative. Is at 2.25, and in 2019 at the high it was at 3.25. So we are still in an area where we are quite comfortable, but we need to be resilient in the longer term, right? I mean, we know that 2022 will be a good year for us, where we will forecast a better growth than last year. Last year we grew by 3.6%. But having said that, we must always be ready for rainy day, right? So it's important that we don't take it for granted that this year is a strong year, but we need to be ready for any eventualities in the longer term.
Yeah. So is there any specific preparatory measure that you want to mention?
Well, we are coming up with a budget this year, usually sometime in October. So we are getting inputs from the people, input from the industries, and we hope to get input from Mr. Mani here as well. How do we actually ensure that this growth that we are achieving this year is sustainable in the long term? So it's about reforms. I think the main theme of the budget is about making sure that reforms are done so that whatever things that we do can be sustained, right? And also be prepared, like you said, we mentioned about resiliency of the economy. That's also important because you never know when the next shock is coming, right? And we have two back-to-back shocks, right? We had the COVID, and now with the inflation, right? The rising costs of living globally, right?
Now, having said that, right? Since you're talking about budget 2023,
yes,
can I get a glimpse of what are some interesting things that you can let me know?
Yeah, of course, I can tell you. Actually, I can tell you all the things that's going to happen in the budget. Yes, that was a joke. But anyway, if you look at what's going to happen, we have come out with a pre-budget statement. So the pre-budget statement really focuses on, we want to formulate people-centric initiatives, and we want to, What do we mean by people-centric? It means that we want to have a budget that creates job opportunities. We want to, raise income of Malaysia, and we want to strengthen social protection, because we've seen how during the pandemic a lot of people have, fall off the safety net, and it's really focusing on the rakyat, socio-economic well-being. So those are the key ones, but for the rakyat. But we also know the importance of the business community. So we need to ensure that we have a budget that helps to provide the conducive business environment. So that will be key, especially in enhancing the competitiveness of our SMEs. Like I said just now, SMEs is very important, and boosting the recovery of certain sectors which were strong before, for example, tourism and other sectors that actually still was impacted by the COVID-19 phenomenon. So these are some of the areas. So stay tuned. But like I said earlier, we are more than happy to hear views from the rakyat, from business communities and people like yourself, ideas that can build our country for the longer term.
Right. That's interesting. So we can see that in Budget 2023, the focus will again be on the rakyat and also on businesses, to helping them to build that recovery and resiliency and competitiveness, right? Now, as you have mentioned just now, you would like to hear our input. How, as a rakyat like myself, if I really got any opinion or anything that I want to tell you guys, like, hey, these are some of the things that we have in mind and we would like to have this, is there any channel that we can actually use to actually approach Ministry of Finance or the budget team or whatnot to tell our opinion? Yeah,
well, that's a good question. But people like you, it's easier because you can talk to me. But others, I think you can go to our website, right? And there's a portal where we can click to. There's a budget portal where you can put your views. But we also are doing roadshows. So during the roadshows, me and my colleagues and my deputy ministers as well go down on the ground. So stay tuned on where we will be. What we plan to do is, what we have been doing also for the last 2 years, is going down the whole of the country, whole of Malaysia in this case, and talk to various stakeholders, the youth, the different sectors, the different chambers, and hear from the rakyat what they want in the budget.
Right. So actually, really, there is a real channel where I can actually...
Yes. I think there were...
Why be this? What I want to... My suggestion like that?
Can. Yeah. But hopefully it's a good suggestion. Right? Yeah.
And I can find
all these suggestions are good, by the way. So let me correct that. Yeah.
And I can find all this information on
our website, on our portal, how and when we will be going. But if you want to have a face-to-face question, but the portal is always open for feedback. And I think we got 60,000 feedback last year on online. So those are the kind of feedbacks that we want to see how we can incorporate. We can't incorporate all, of course, but we like incorporate those that we think are doable and achievable, and within, of course, the resources that we have.
All right. So, YB, one more last question, right?
Okay.
Many people have been reading the news and they've been reading a lot about Sri Lanka. Yes. And recently there are articles that actually come out and say that Malaysia debt is at a level that's very dangerous. And there's a very high chance that Malaysia can end up like Sri Lanka. So, quite scary, right?
Yeah, well, of course. Okay, let me explain it. Very in simple terms. Let's look at the financial first, right? When I look at financial, Malaysia versus Sri Lanka. Okay. So for Malaysia, our total debt to GDP is around 63.8%. The statutory limit is 65%. So we're still below that. And what's more important is that 97% of our loans, our debt, in this case, is denominated in ringgit. So we're not exposed to foreign currency movements or interest rate in other countries. Now, compared to Sri Lanka debt is higher. Debt to GDP in Sri Lanka is 107.2% of the GDP. And does it mean it's bad? Higher debt is bad? No. If you look at Japan is higher at 263.1% of GDP, and our friendly neighbor in Singapore, right, it's about 132.8% of GDP. So what this shows is that debt levels does not necessarily indicate that a country is at risk of becoming bankrupt. So for someone who's richer, obviously can buy a bigger house, right? So it doesn't mean you have a bigger loan to buy the bigger house compared to someone who has a smaller loan to buy a smaller house. Means you having a bigger loan, you're at risk. It's about your ability to pay that loan, right? Not so much the size of the loan. And so you look at your balance sheet, your account statement. But what important is that we need to be able to pay for the debt. But we look at the other point is that inflation rate. Malaysia inflation rate, as you know today, is around 2.5%, right? Recently announced about 2. We are expecting between 2 to up to 3%. But what is Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is now at 6%. And also look at reserves. Our official reserves, right, our central bank official reserve, is at 116.9 billion US. What is Sri Lanka's national reserve? 3.14 billion US. So I think making those comparison between the two countries should also realize that the main issue and about debt management is about our affordability and also debt sustainability. So really, when you compare Malaysia and Sri Lanka, you need to look at the balance sheet and see for sure whether the comparison is right or not. So don't worry, we won't be like Sri Lanka.
Fantastic. Now I feel more assured. Is there anything else that you want to leave with us as a parting word?
Well, first of all, thank you for your time, Peter. I really enjoyed this session. But what's important is for us to continue to give as much as we can for the country, and then I think we are now at the stage where we are going to look at challenging times, what's happening in the global economy, but we must continue to focus and look at not just the short term, but focus also on the immediate and long term. We always have on financial planning or on financial management, never lose sight on the mid to the long term when you try to address the short term issues.
All right. Thank you very much, YB, for your time.
Thank you.
That's all about it for today. See you guys. Take care.
Thank you.